With Champions League just around the corner, we are back with UCL Fantasy content for the first time in 3 or 4 months, where I discuss my first draft. This will be my latest version with a few changes that I've made, and there probably will be more moves that I make before the deadline, which I'll show you in the deadline stream, as well as my team selection video. So be sure to check all of that out as well, and subscribe to the channel, smash the like button. We're trying to get to new goals such as 18,000 subscribers and getting this video to over 300 likes. That'd be massively appreciated. Today I'm going to discuss the captaincy situation in match day 7 before moving on to my current draft, and I want you to let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. A few of my players in this draft are injured, and I'll be discussing some alternatives in case they aren't available for the first leg of the round of 16. But without further ado, let's get straight into this video. Let's provide a recap on the fixtures for the round of 16. The draw was made around November, before the World Cup even started, so it feels like a lifetime ago. So we kick off on Tuesday, the 14th of February, Valentine's Day, with AC Milan versus Tottenham Hotspur and Paris Saint-Germain versus Bayern Munich. And I'll be discussing Mbappe later on, but he came off with an injury in PSG's recent league game, so that could be a huge concern for them. And Neymar is also currently injured. But the reason why I've got this screen up right now is because I want to discuss the captaincy. You can put the captaincy armband on someone like Messi, Mbappe, or maybe a Bayern Munich player on the Tuesday, and then if they blank or don't do that well, you can change the captain to someone playing on the Wednesday. I think most of you know this by now, but what some people aren't aware of is that you have up to 4 different captaincy options in match day 7, because we have 2 other kind of days within this match day where you can put a captaincy armband on someone else. So on the Tuesday, we can go for a Napoli player against Frankfurt, maybe Osimhen, maybe Kvaratskhelia, or a Liverpool or Real Madrid player, depending on who you favour in that matchup. And then after that, you could also change the armband to someone else playing on the Wednesday, a Man City player against Leipzig, or maybe an Inter or Porto player. So you've got plenty of options in match day 7. You can afford to be a bit different, especially towards the beginning of the week. Then if you keep on kind of failing or not getting as many points with your captaincy as you would like, then you could play it a bit safer. But that's just to let you know, you have up to 4 different captaincy options in match day 7, and it has to be one from each single day basically. If you get a haul, there's no real need to change it, to be fair, but it's completely up to you if you want to be aggressive with the armband. So that is just a little update for you before we move on to my latest draft, and I'm going to start right now. Every year we get a 5 million boost in our transfer budget heading into the round of 16. So I have 107.8 million at my disposal, and that will help me build a really strong squad, not just for match day 7, but also long term. And if you've already used the wildcard and limitless like myself, then it's very important to think beyond match day 7, because you don't want to be in a position where a lot of your players are eliminated. If you back certain teams, then you might want to stack up on them. But then looking at the counter argument of that, if you put all your eggs in one basket, that could also go horribly wrong. So sometimes it's nice to strike that balance, and it's very difficult to maybe cross the line. But ultimately, I think with all these tips I'm going to provide you on this channel, and also all the discussions in the streams and in the comment section, we can help each other to build a really strong squad until the end of the Champions League campaign. So now let's start off with the goalkeepers that I have in my latest draft of Champions League Fantasy. As you may know from my advice and everything I've said in FPL, I'm not a huge fan of having 2 expensive goalkeepers, but I'm more open-minded in UCL Fantasy because the nature of the competition is entirely different. It's a cup competition, it's a life or death situation, teams progress or get eliminated. In the Premier League, of course, the goalkeepers will play every single week unless they get injured or suspended. But I've gone for Courtois and Ederson because I backed Madrid and Man City to go far into the competition, maybe quarterfinals or semi-finals at the very least. But they do have a tough fixture match day 7. Both of them are away to Liverpool and Red Bull Leipzig respectively, so you might not expect a clean sheet here. But one important tip which I always say is to make sure your goalkeepers play on different days, because you can make substitutions within the match day and it boosts your chance of getting a better score from your goalkeeper, and you'll have enough budget, I think, to have 2 decent options who you can rotate between basically. So that's why I've gone for something like this, but I may downgrade one of these goalkeepers to just have a cheaper option and then boost one of my outfield players, whether it's in the defence, the midfield, or the forward line. I've got some notes about all the players in my draft, and both Courtois and Ederson have kept 2 clean sheets since the World Cup, with Courtois playing 7 games and Ederson playing only 6. And what I'm really impressed with Thibaut Courtois is in the Champions League, he has such a high ceiling. We saw what he did in the Champions League final against Liverpool last time out. He's going to be facing them again now in the round of 16. He has kept 2 clean sheets in 4 Champions League matches. He's made 17 saves, and he's also made a penalty save against Celtic, which absolutely saved them, and also Real Madrid defenders. I had one that week, for example. to ultimately keep a clean sheet, and Courtois can make the difference in all these big games. He is the difference sometimes between a clean sheet and a goal conceded, or vice versa. He's a really top goalkeeper. As for Ederson, he's actually got a really decent record in the Champions League this season. He's only played 4 times, but he's kept 3 clean sheets, but only 4 saves made in 4 games. And that just goes to show you how low his ceiling is. He's very rarely going to get you 7 points, and I doubt he's going to get anything more than that in any match day, no matter who the opposition is. But he does face an informed Leipzig, and I'm a bit concerned about that, especially if you decide to go for a Man City defender as well. But I think in the long term, you will benefit from having double maybe Man City defence, for example, because they could go far into the competition despite a really tough Leipzig side right in front of them in the round of 16. So just some things to think about with your goalkeepers. I might downgrade Ederson, for example, to someone like Vlaco Dimos, maybe Merit from Napoli, or another goalkeeper like Mignolet, who is one of the top goalkeepers in the Champions League this season. The same goes for Diogo Costa, and those two have been absolutely fantastic. There's a huge difference in points between those two and the rest of the goalkeepers. So I will reevaluate this, I will admit that, but Courtois and Ederson certainly give you not only goalkeepers playing on different days, playing for 2 top teams, but they also have a great chance of going really far in the Champions League this season. There are a few problems with my defence as well, particularly with Leipzig versus Man City facing each other, and I've got Simikan in there, and I will have some Man City attackers as well, so there's going to be a conflict of interest. And not only that, John Stones is an injury doubt. He came off injured against Arsenal in the FA Cup. It could be a hamstring problem, and if that's the case, he could be out for quite some time. He could move on to another Man City defender, or maybe to someone else entirely, so there could be 2 or 3 changes in my backline, but I still think it's fairly decent, and I've got 4 of the top scoring Champions League fantasy defenders so far this season. So with Simikan, things have been a bit mixed bag since the World Cup. So he's only made 2 appearances since then, in a 1-1 draw against Bayern Munich and also in their recent game. He has just come back from an injury, so some positive news that he's already started, and he should be, more than fit enough in time for that clash against Man City. But no attacking returns since then, and he was actually in really good goal scoring and assist form before that competition. And some things to talk about in terms of the Champions League fantasy stats, because he has been absolutely terrific. Like I said, he has returned in every single Champions League game with either 5 points or more, and only Grimaldo has scored more points amongst defenders in the Champions League this season. He's only got 4% ownership. He's got 1 goal plus 3 assists with 3 clean sheets, even a man of the match award, which is very rare for a defender, and 27 ball recoveries. So there's a lot to like with Simikan. I would highly recommend him. He's the only Leipzig player I would really consider. I know you wouldn't really back them for a clean sheet, but I still think you can get an attacking return or maybe some ball recovery points. I can see him getting 4 or 5 points in one of these matches, and perhaps even more if he can add a clean sheet or maybe a goal to one of those games as well. So I think he's a really good choice. Is he great in the long term? Perhaps not. You would back Man City to go through, but with the form Leipzig are in, I would not be shocked if they knocked out Man City. They're really challenging Bayern Munich for the title right now, and they're looking very solid. So Simikan is definitely one to look out for. I wanted him in Matchday 6. I ended up not going for him because he was away to Shakhtar. He's still got like a 12-pointer, so he's a really good UCL fantasy asset, and he's someone that we need to talk about more often than we have done. Next up is Grimaldo, is the top scoring Champions League defender this season, and he's got 47 points overall, so a really nice tally, but most of his points have come against Maccabi Haifa. In 2 games against them, he's accumulated 32 points, so only 15 points in the other 4 games, which is fairly underwhelming. So I don't think Benfica are particularly great defensively. I think they're a good side, but they've also just lost Enzo Fernandez to Chelsea, so that could damage them and their chances of progressing to the quarterfinals and also subsequently the semi-finals. Only 1 clean sheet for Grimaldo in the Champions League this season, but he's also got a Man of the Match award and 2 goals and 2 assists. You mainly want him for the attack and returns, and actually he just returned in his last 4 games before Benfica's recent game where he did blank, but 4 returns in the last 5 games with goals or assists. He has been absolutely terrific, and he's also got 3 clean sheets in that time period, I believe, now maybe up to 4. So Grimaldo has been absolutely sensational since the World Cup. Some fantastic form shown by him. Great attacking wing back, and I think he could do really well even in the round of 16 and continue where he left off in the group stages. But like I said, my main concern is that Benfica aren't great defensively, and Grimaldo has got most of his points against one opposition, so I want to see how he does against other teams as well. Next up is John Stones, who is in my current draft, but I may have to reconsider this because he came off injured against Arsenal. It could be a hamstring problem, and things aren't looking too good for his prospects of featuring in the round of 16. Now, we won't have any more updates until Man City's next Premier League game, so once we have that out of the way, we can maybe find out more about the extent of Stones' injury. But let's say he isn't available, I would probably move him on to Ake, and that would be the kind of sensible option. Both Stones and Ake were the most informed City defenders up until now. Stones has got 17 points in just 2 Champions League games, and I would expect him to be more nailed on in the second half of the season should he be fit. And he's got 9 ball recoveries. He scored a goal which was outside the box, and just really impressive stuff by him. 1 clean sheet in those 2 Champions League appearances, and he's only got 1% ownership, which I really like. But I may have to reconsider this, and instead of Stones, I will probably go for Ake. And Ruben Dias is also knocking on the door. He's in the squad. He's been fit for quite some time. Ruben Dias could be quite nailed on in the Champions League, but then miss out in the Premier League. We don't know yet. You never know with Pep Guardiola. This is a risk, of course, and it's also risky because double up in Man City defence against Leipzig, who are in form, it's not really going to always equate to points. You know, there's not a guarantee about that. So I may reconsider this stance and just go for another defender instead, maybe an Inter Milan defender, for example. But they also have a lot of issues there with so much rotation with the fullbacks and the wing-backs. Some are form players like Dumfries, and you just don't know what you're going to get from them as well. They're facing Porto. You may have Taremi or another Porto asset. There's so much to consider, of course, as always, and I'll be thinking more about this over the next week or two, doing more research, and then making a final decision. But as things stand, I'm going to go for a Man City defender in Ake or Stones if he's fit, and then probably go for Edison in goal too. The other 2 defenders left is Micheli, who has been absolutely fantastic in the Champions League, but in his last 3 starts for Club Brugge, he has scored 2 own goals, which is absolutely ridiculous, by the way. I kind of laughed out loud when I saw that. And he's got no clean sheets since the World Cup either. So I'm a bit hesitant about this. Despite how good Club Brugge were in the Champions League with 5 clean sheets in 6 games, I may go elsewhere. I know he's been really good with ball recoveries too. I think he's got 45 ball recoveries this season, which is one of the most, if not the most, in the Champions League this season. But that is very worrying, the form that Club Brugge are showing in their domestic competition. So that is something to definitely reconsider. He's got obviously 5 clean sheets out of 6 games, like I said. He's returned in every single game, just like Simican, and he's also the 3rd highest scoring defender, and he's still only at 5% ownership. The fixture's fairly decent against Benfica, but if you had to pick one team to go through, you probably would favour Benfica, even with the departure of Enzo Fernandez. So that's going to be an interesting one, actually, with Micheli. He's been fantastic so far, but I don't think he will continue this, and even if Club Brugge progress to the quarterfinals, I'm not so sure if you'd want him by the time you get to Matchday 9. The last defender is Di Lorenzo with a really promising fixture against Frankfurt, who have some good players like Kamada, but I don't think that'll be enough to displace Napoli, who are one of the best teams in the world, actually. Not just the Champions League, and they've got a really good chance of winning that, but also in general. They've been absolutely fantastic. They're flying in Serie A. They're around 13 points clear. They've got a great chance of winning that for the first time since the Diego Maradona days, and Di Lorenzo's played a pivotal part in that. He has scored in the last match, and he also provided an assist in a 5-1 victory over Juventus. He was involved in both of Napoli's clean sheets as well since the World Cup. The only time that he actually didn't feature, Napoli didn't keep a clean sheet. He's the 4th highest scoring defender in Champions League Fantasy. He's got 2 double-digit returns and also 2 blanks, so he's still been very consistent. 1 goal and 1 assist in the Champions League with 43 ball recoveries, a Man of the Match award, and 2 clean sheets. That's what I really like about this defence. You get goals, assists, ball recoveries, and also the possibility of Man of the Match awards, and I think that makes this really solid, and I probably will keep 2 or 3 of these defenders at least, but the ones that are most likely to be displaced are probably Simican and Ake, despite what I said about Micheli and his own goal kind of run he's going on. I believe the midfield is a bit more set in stone compared to the defence and goalkeeper, but I've got some key omissions such as Mohamed Salah, who's actually the top scorer in the Champions League and the highest scoring midfielder as a result. Leroy Sané, who is one of my favourite Champions League assets, probably of all time. He's been so consistent over the last 2 years, and I would like to have him, but of course, a difficult fixture against PSG could maybe put me off. And you've also got the likes of Vinicius and KDB, who currently feature in my draft. But starting off with João Mario, he actually scored a brace in his last game, and he's got 4 goals in his last 7 games since the World Cup, including a penalty. So he's on penalties, he's on set pieces, and he also can score from open play. There's so much to like, and he's actually produced successive 10-pointers in the Champions League to wrap up the group stages. 4 goals and 1 assist in the Champions League with 2 yellow cards and 24 balls recovered. I wanted to highlight that 2 yellow cards because that's quite a lot to happen in just 6 games. So that's something to think about. There could be a possible ban if he's not too careful. So that's just something else to highlight about him. But a really good fantasy asset at just around 6 million. A good fixture as well against Club Brugge, who have been off form since the World Cup. So there's a lot to like there with Joao Mario. We know from FPL that Mahrez is the informed Man City midfielder, but I still believe De Bruyne is a bit more nailed on in general, and that's why I'm going for him. And not just that, I think he's more capable of Man of the Match awards, even if he deserves them or not. In 3 starts, he's got 2 Man of the Match awards in the Champions League this season, with 3 assists, including 1 off the bench. And I also think he's a really good option in general. In the Champions League a few years ago, he was absolutely crucial for Man City in the knockout stages against PSG, for example, but only 2 assists for him since the World Cup, despite some top performances in the Premier League and also the Carabao Cup, but some underwhelming games as well against Man United and Arsenal, as I've discussed in recent FPL videos. I still might go for De Bruyne, but if not, I would reconsider and maybe go for Riyad Mahrez instead. They're the 2 Man City midfielders I'm looking at. Apart from that, I'm not too interested in Grealish, Gundogan, and the rest they have on offer, although Bernardo Silva has been a good UCL fantasy asset in the years gone by. Next up is Vinicius Jr., who had a slow start since the World Cup, but he has slowly but surely gotten better. He has registered 2 goals and 1 assist in his last 4 games, and that includes 1 against Atletico Madrid after all the kind of turbulence that went around there and that derby. But no returns in La Liga though. That is actually a key point there. All of his returns have come in the Copa del Rey and also the Supercopa de España. He has returned in all 5 of his Champions League starts with 4 goals and 1 assist, and he's got 13 ball recoveries, which is fairly decent for a winger like him. So I do like him as an option. He's away to Liverpool, where he has had some joy over the years. He scored the Champions League winning goal against them last year, and also a few years ago when Liverpool were really poor, Vinicius Jr. was tearing them up as well, and Madrid weren't exactly that great in that year anyway. So I think he's a good option here up against Trent Alexander-Arnold. That'll be an interesting battle once again, and I think Vinicius will get the better of him, so he's a really good choice here. But if not, you can go for Salah or Leroy Sané. I think those 2 alongside De Bruyne and Vinicius are the 4 best premium midfielders in the game. That leaves just 2 midfielders left. Kvaratskhelia away to Frankfurt, and I wouldn't mind a triple up in Napoli or even a quadruple up. Remember, that's another thing I haven't discussed. You can now have up to 4 players from a single club in the round of 16. It then goes up as we progress through each stage, but I wouldn't mind a triple up against Frankfurt, to be quite frank. I haven't gone for it myself. I've gone for a double up, but I may reconsider, especially with all the injuries we have in the forward positions, for example. But Kvaratskhelia, a really good option. He also hasn't been that great since the World Cup, and that was until recently, actually. He's got 4 goals and assists in his last 2 games, including a masterclass against Juventus with a goal and 2 assists, and he got an assist against Roma to set up Osimhen for a fantastic goal. And Kvaratskhelia has been one of the best players this season, a revelation across Europe, and he's only going to get better and better, it seems. He's got 2 goals and 3 assists in the Champions League with 2 double-digit returns and also 1 Man of the Match award. So there's so much to like with Kvaratskhelia, and he's also fairly cheap as well. And Bellingham's the last midfielder we have on offer. He has returned in his last 3 games, including friendlies, but he did blank in the recent game against Bayer Leverkusen in a 2-0 win for Borussia Dortmund, and he did get that goal plus assist against Augsburg in the Bundesliga, his first start in the Bundesliga since the World Cup. He has returned in all 5 of his Champions League appearances. He did miss out in Matchday 6 with 3 double-digit returns, 4 goals and 1 assist, 28 ball recoveries, and 2 Man of the Match awards. He's a jack of all trades. He can get points from goals, assists, ball recoveries, Man of the Match awards, you name it. He's a fantastic player, one of the best midfielders in the world. And up against Chelsea, who have been very, very inconsistent this season, I would not be surprised if Bellingham produces another haul and helps Dortmund get through to the quarterfinals. To conclude this latest draft, we've got the front 3, which is always one of the most interesting parts of any fantasy game, but especially in UCL Fantasy, where we tend to have so many options in the forward position. Maybe this year it's a bit fewer than normal. You used to have Ronaldo, Lewandowski and all these options, and now you're kind of just limited to Haaland, Mbappe, Messi in terms of premiums, you could argue. But Erling Haaland is a lock-in. The same goes for Mbappe if he's fit, but he's actually a doubt now to face Bayern Munich, as we'll talk about very soon. With Erling Haaland, he's got 8 goals in 9 games across all competitions since the World Cup. In the Champions League, in just 249 minutes, he has registered 5 goals, and he's been subbed off in 4 of his starts, one of them due to an injury against his old club, Borussia Dortmund, and he's got 28 Champions League goals in 23 games, which is absolutely ridiculous. He has also scored against every single team in the Champions League with the exception of Man City, who he now plays for, and Ajax, who aren't in the knockout stages of the Champions League this season. And Erling Haaland's goals per 90 is 1.81, which is by far the highest of any player in the competition this season. Next up is Mbappe, who's only got 1 league goal in 5 appearances, but he did have 5 goals and 1 assist in a 7-0 win in the French Cup. But in terms of his last league game, he came off injured in the 20th minute, and before that he had a penalty, it was saved, he then had it retaken, it got saved again, hit off the post, Mbappe had the rebound and missed an open goal. So it was a nightmare for the Frenchman. But in terms of the Champions League, he's the joint top scorer with 7 goals alongside Mohamed Salah. Only Messi and Jota have more than Mbappe's 3 assists. He's got 4 Man of the Match awards, which is the most of any player in the competition, 3 double-digit returns and 2 9-pointers. So he's been absolutely terrific in the Champions League, and that's why if he's fit, it doesn't matter if he says in Bayern Munich or any team, he's going to be in my draft for sure. Only 1 blank, and that was against Benfica away, a very strong team there. So Mbappe's been absolutely terrific. Let's wait and see how serious this injury is. Reports are that he could miss the first leg against Bayern Munich. That will be a huge blow for Paris Saint-Germain, and honestly, it will dent their chances of progressing through to the next round. The final player in my latest draft is Taremi, but I am heavily considering a move to Osimhen, considering Napoli's form and also the Nigerian, how well he's playing. But the reason why I haven't gone for him yet is because he's only started 1 game in the Champions League so far this season. I would expect that to change now with Napoli in the round of 16. I think things will change and their approach to the competition will change as well. They've got a comfortable lead in Serie A too, but you've also got 2 competent strikers in Raspadori and Giovanni Simeone who could also start. So that's something to think about. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But with Taremi, things have been very mixed bag. He scored a brace in the World Cup against England. He had a good tournament, but since then, he scored a hat-trick in his first league game back. But then after that, only 1 goal and 2 assists in his next 7 games for Porto, with 4 blanks in a row. So Taremi had a really good start since the World Cup, and after that has kind of tailed off. But oddly enough, in the Champions League, it was the opposite. He had a very poor start and got better and better as the competition went on. He got a red card versus Atletico Madrid in Matchday 1. He's also got 2 yellows throughout the competition. So I think he's, a very aggressive player. He can get these yellow cards and reds. So that's something that you have to be a bit cautious about with Taremi. Also, since Matchday 3, he has returned in every single game. Obviously, he was suspended for Matchday 2, came back in Matchday 3. A completely new man, it seems, with absolutely sensational goal-scoring form, 5 goals and 2 assists. A Man of the Match award, and he's been absolutely terrific in the Champions League. He does face Inter away, and you might not really back him for some returns there, but I think he will get a goal across the 2 legs. It's just a matter of when, whether it's in Matchday 7 or in Matchday 8. But like I said, I'm heavily considering moving away from Taremi, going away from that Porto Inter Milan fixture, which I think could be quite tough to decide on, and going for Osimhen instead. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, but I may kind of reconsider this and make a change or 2 retrospectively and go for the Nigerian instead. But like I said, my main concern is a bit of rotation with the other 2 forwards, because Napoli have a lot of strength in depth in the forward position. And the other kind of key changes I could make, like I said before, include the goalkeepers, downgrading one of them to a cheaper option, maybe going away from Simikan and a Man City defender like Ake, and also considering going away from Micheli, and in terms of the midfield, maybe adding a Salah or Leroy Sané to the mix. But in general, most of this team is fairly locked in. Let's wait and see if Mbappe is fit enough. If he isn't, then I could move on to Lionel Messi as a like-for-like replacement, or keep Taremi and go for the Nigerian as well and have a cheaper front three. Now let me show you how I would order the bench, because it's very important to have those playing later in the week on your bench. How I would maybe go about the captaincy as well with my latest draft, and cover any other questions you may have with my squad. I would have all those playing on the 22nd of February with the exception of Erling Haaland on my bench, and I can then bring them on for anyone who blanks before then, between the 14th of February and the 21st, with all these key games going on. So I've got a 3-4-3 formation. I've got Courtois in goal, a back 3 of Micheli, Di Lorenzo and Grimaldo, a midfield 4 of Bellingham, João Mario, Vinicius Jr. and Kvaratskhelia, and a front 3 of Haaland, Osimhen and Mbappe. So really solid stuff, and I think everything speaks for itself. If we switch it to the date, you can then see why I've ordered it in such a way. So in terms of the captaincy, I would go for Kylian Mbappe first, playing on the 14th of February, provided that he's fit enough in time, and some alternatives could include Messi if Mbappe isn't fit enough in time, and I could also go for Leroy Sané from Bayern Munich's perspective. effective if I bring him into my ranks. In terms of the 15th of February, I've got plenty of options, but I think I would go for Jude Bellingham. The alternative that I am considering is Joao Mario, but I probably would just go for Bellingham because he has been absolutely terrific and so consistent in the Champions League. Then next up on the 21st of February, the Tuesday after, it would probably be a Napoli player, and I'm looking at the Nigerian striker as my next captain. And then finally, it would be Erling Haaland on the 22nd of February. So I've got 4 solid captaincy options with this 15-man squad, and I've also got plenty of differentials that I could go to and even captain as an example. And I'm just going to wait and see for more injury updates, see how the other games pan out before we reach the round of 16 and we reach Valentine's Day when the Champions League returns in Matchday 7. Things are looking really good so far, and I want to see your thoughts and your teams down in the comment section below. And thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's try to get this video to over 300 likes. Let's keep on pushing towards 18,000 subscribers. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and you can also become a patron or a channel member. Patreon.com/DylanRCM. You can sign up for as little as £3 per month for early access to videos and access to all my team reveals. And you can also check the Discord server, the UCL Fantasy League. The links are in the description below. Good luck for Matchday 7 and the rest of the Champions League campaign. Enjoy the football, and I'll see you next time.